Hello everyone, welcome to another finished pages video. This time you will see a lot of pages because my last finished pages video was last year in November, so you will see all the pages that I colored from December to March. Well, actually up to half of the March because that's when I filmed the rest of this video. As you know, I film everything I color, so you will see videos for some of these pages here on my YouTube channel. But if you want to color along, see the full, not edited process, see all the colors and art supplies that I'm using, or if you want to learn from my guided tutorials, you can check out my Patreon Nekosimi Coloring, and you can join our fellowship of the coloring cats. Now, I hope you will enjoy all the finished pages, and let me know in the comments which page is your favorite. Let's start with Johanna's Christmas by Johanna Basford, and I will really try to remember what I did on the page. First of all, I'm really happy that I get back to this coloring book. At first I wasn't really thrilled about it, and my pages that I have done wasn't really detailed or something, but I like the glitter effect. But this is an old page, so this is the new one. I started this in December, and I was using watercolors for almost everything. So for the outer background, inner background, and I only used colored pencils on the castle and the stand. It was my, I guess, second try to do the bokeh effect, and I did that many times again later. And I was also using Posca, the new Posca. This is PC5BR. It has a tip like this. It's very soft. It's great for doing stars or falling snow and snow on the ground and snow everywhere. And I actually have 4 ways how to do the bokeh effect with watercolors and how to do the snow with this Posca pen. I have both tutorials on my Patreon, so you can check it out if you want. The next page I have done in December is this one, and again, bokeh effect everywhere. And same as on the previous page, watercolors on the background and the small background, and just pencils on the circle and on the rabbit. I also used pencils on top of the watercolors in the inner circle just to make the gradient effect a little bit more vibrant and more visible. Third page in this coloring book is again the same bokeh effect, but this time I chose different colors. I tried to mix green and red so it would feel more Christmassy, and I used blue for the ornament just to add more colors than these two. This was almost fail because I was using paper stickers under the watercolors. It works great on watercolor paper, but it worked really terrible on this paper. I wasn't even able to remove all the stickers. Yeah, so don't use paper stickers in your coloring books if you plan to remove them. But I have more Christmas pages. This is the new Christmas coloring book by Maria Trolle, and I did several pages. So this is the first page on which I was using alcohol markers because this coloring book is one-sided, which is awesome. This is the other side. Obviously, alcohol markers just bleed through the pages, but this time it doesn't matter. And I was combining them with pencils for the reindeer. And yes, I completely forgot about this snowflake, but I just didn't get around to color it. So it's just like this. It's not a big deal. To create this effect on the background, it's so simple. And as usually, I have a full tutorial, commented tutorial on the background on my Patreon. I'm talking about my Patreon because I want you to know that there is this option. You don't have to sign for anything, but if you are interested, if you want to learn more, maybe that can be an option for you. I'm also in the process of editing a full tutorial, which will be there as well in upcoming weeks. And yes, it's true that I do a lot of pages for my Patreon. There is at least one color along or tutorial every week. And there are also full, not edited versions of my YouTube videos. And this is one of the pages that you can find on my Patreon as full coloring video, so you will see the whole process. And I will also provide you with a list of used colors and all materials. But you can see it on YouTube as well as edited cinematic version. So if you just want to take the inspiration, YouTube is perfect for this. And it was so fun to make this page. I was using all kinds of media. So there are oil pastels on the background, then there are Nia colors on the inner background on the sky. There are also some oil pastels on the aurora, and I think acrylic brush pens on the aurora as well. I struggled with the shape because I tried to follow the lines that were already on the illustration, but somehow it didn't work like I planned. And then I was also using some pencils on the main illustration. It's probably acrylic paint for these splashes for the stars, and some acrylic markers, I guess, for the fur. I also started this page, but I never finished that, so maybe next year. It seems that I did a lot of Christmas coloring pages. Wow, I wouldn't expect that actually. And this is another page. This should be the last Christmas page I did. The bokeh effect is just so magical and I love doing it. I added this top part of the ornament because it wasn't an ornament, but I just did it. So there are watercolors on the background, and then the whole illustration, including the sky, is done with colored pencils and some acrylic markers, probably some Posca, maybe not this one, but some markers. Again, I did the snow effect here and everywhere, and I really like the colors of this page, especially on the background. This book is not one-sided, so I couldn't use alcohol markers, but watercolors worked just fine. Which also proves this older page where I used really a lot of water, and the other side is completely fine. But now, do you remember when I was talking about not making more whips and work on finishing whips? Yeah, do you remember that? Yeah, me too. However, it still didn't prevent me from making more whips. So here in this Wallenstern Shooting Star coloring book, I have 3 work in progress pictures. Here is the double page. At first I wanted to make it maybe like matching pages. I'm not really sure, but I'm kinda losing my motivation to continue on this page, and it's the colors. I just don't like the purple on the tree. I think it's just too dark, but I will try to improve it. I actually have the idea for this page to make this inner circle as a water drop. And then you can see I have a lot of circles here, which I also want to transform into water drops. And then here on this page, the background is all pencils, and I really like it. I really enjoyed how the effect was creating and how it was actually coming out. And I want to do some Zen doodles on the background. Yeah, I want to make the waves, you know, so hopefully it will really create this effect. Then I have another whip and finished whip. It's this double page. It was also supposed to be matching page, which you can partially see. On this page, I did only the base with Nia colors, and I plan to continue with pencils, and I will probably make some oil pastel background. I don't know really what exactly. And this was the color along for my Patreon, and I was using all kinds of art media. We can see some pencil work here. Also, I was using Supra colors by Caran d'Ache, which are water-soluble pencils, and I used them for the background. Then on top of that, because it wasn't vibrant enough, I was trying to use soft pastels, but it didn't work. I thought it will work better, but it didn't. What I was using, acrylic markers. Yeah, I did these misty lines with acrylic markers. Then I just did the outline, And also what I was also using, some acrylic markers here to cover a little bit of the outlines everywhere. And one more thing, but let me remember. Oh, and I was also using the ink pads. Yeah, just to enhance the color a little bit, especially on the pink part. I really enjoyed the process, especially when it was closer to the end, because here was a lot of ugly stages. How about something a little bit different? It's been ages since I colored anything by Karron, and this page was picked in the shuffle, or it was selected in a poll that I'm running on my Patreon, I'm not sure. And this is all pencil work. Yeah, you hear right, only pencil work and acrylic markers. I think the background is done with Posca. And this time I didn't want to do anything complicated for the background. I thought that the black frame will be perfect because it will highlight the actual illustration and it will not disturb the feel and the scene. I tried to make her dress transparent, which I think is pretty good. Maybe I could use some oil pastels to create some foliage behind the trees, but I like it like this. The only downside of pages like this are the faces. All the faces are so small that it's so hard to work with them, and it's really hard to not create a monster. But yeah, I like it. I really like it. And right now I am working on another portrait in which is Cottage. This is also for my Patreon. It was also picked in one of these games. And I am doing this page. Until now, this is all pencils. I'm working with Prismacolors and I plan to make some nice bokeh effect with oil pastels. When you are seeing this video, this page is probably finished. But this is not the only page from this book. I also have one finished page, which is this one. And I did some galaxy as usually with watercolors. But before I did that, I used gouache to cover the illustration. I wanted to see if it helps to make the black lines invisible. And I don't know, I really like the result. Even though when you cover everything with gouache, it's not that you wouldn't see anything, any lines, you still see them, but it's much easier to cover them. However, if you are using watercolors, then it can be tricky because gouache can be re-wet with water. So yeah, here all around the key, the watercolors just mixed with the white gouache, which caused that the effect and the work with the watercolors was suddenly totally different. It was like working with gouache rather than watercolors, and it was quite challenging. Even though I know how to use gouache, I usually don't use it with so much water. And the thing is that even if you mix gouache with a lot of water, which you can do, it still doesn't behave like watercolors at all because the particles of the paint are just too heavy, there is no flow. But as you can see, it's nothing terrible and nothing that couldn't be managed. It was just a bump on the road. And also, colored pencils on top of the gouache, they behave differently as well. They are less strong and mixing is different. The paper suddenly have different texture. And it's not like that you could burnish the tooth. It won't be that visible on this particular picture because it's really tiny, but I can clearly see it here on this golden part and a little bit on the wings, or maybe here on the ribbon as well. You can see the texture. It's not bad, it's just different, and it depends only if you like it, if you enjoy the process, and if you enjoy the result or not. Let's take a look into Steampunk Revival by R.J.Hampson. I did a mixed media page. Woo, that was a journey, wow. I was using that for a review on RTX alcohol markers. The video is on my channel, by the way. And I am showing here in this video how you can use the alcohol markers in combination with other art media and not only as a base layer. I also showed you that you can use water or water-based media in Amazon coloring book. So I was using Supra colors for the yellow part on the background, for the whole circle. And you can see it's nothing terrible. I mean, the alcohol markers did more mess on the other side, right? And there is no damage on the paper. And I'm talking about the process and about everything around it in the video. So you can check out the link in the description box to get to this video if you want. And I was also using gouache for the base background and then acrylic brush markers for the hills and trees, and then alcohol markers, pencils, and some white Posca. I definitely plan to color more in this coloring book because it's just awesome. Let's stay with R.J.Hampson for a moment. And this is a special page because RJ created this page specifically for the Tubithon, where we were coloring for Cancer. Tubithon was basically coloring marathon where I and another 15 amazing colorists took a part in it. So we all did coloring live streams, and this is the page I decided to color for this event. I printed this page on Canson watercolor hot press paper. I chose hot press because I was using a lot of colored pencils as well. However, hot press is not cold press, it behaves differently, so I was quite lost when I started to do the background. And my idea was to make the rabbit like in the forest. So the whole background is done with watercolors. I was using white knights as usually. A mix of pencils, I'm not sure which pencils I was using. However, the edited coloring video is on my YouTube channel, and the full process, the full coloring video with a list of used colors is on my Patreon, but this time the video for this page is public, so everyone can watch it no matter whether you are a member or not. Also, if you are interested to watch the Tubithon live streams, I will put the link to the whole playlist into the description box. I will now show you few of the pages that I did for Patreon specifically as color alongs. So this from Dream Voyage is one of them. I was using oil pastels for the background, for the bottom background, but also alcohol markers for the upper background, for the blue sky. Then I also used some pencils and probably acrylic markers here on the flames. And I also used gouache to cover the lines on the egg, but this time the added texture from the gouache really helped, in my opinion. Then the next page is in Dark Fairytales, and it's this page. I so struggled with ideas. And you know how Kerby does the smoke, right? It's just impossible to color, at least for me. So I decided to take my oil pastels and I just covered most of it in oil pastels. I also used a little bit of it on the gold pile and it added something magical into it, a flow. And I basically used the oil pastels for the whole background. So the pencils are only on the red cave, then on the genie, on Aladdin, and on the pile of gold. And I must say that oil pastels are lifesavers and game changers and just everything. Every time I just don't know how to do something or what should I use, I can just use oil pastels and the result is always so vibrant, so beautiful. And as an example how they saved me hours and hours of work is this page. Even though it's a little bit older, look at the background, I think that it added something really magical and something, I don't know how to explain, but I like it more than it was before. I think there were some flowers here on the background. I could never color such background. I was using watercolors first on it, but I didn't like the effect. I didn't like how pale they became. And oil pastels just gives you so much freedom and they save you so much time. Another example of oil pastels and how great they are is on this page. I know this is older page again. This is almost all oil pastels, and the full color along is on my Patreon. And as you can see, there are oil pastels on the whole sky. I also used them for the ship, only for the glass. And also I used it for the ground in combination with acrylic brush pens, which I used for this texture. But it would take me ages to color the ground with pencils, so I used oil pastels. And then I did the helmet. This is like a point of view of another astronaut. And just quickly, another example. I did this on my live stream and the background was yellow. It was done with Inktense, but I didn't like it, so I changed that with oil pastels. And wow, I like it much more like this. But it's not finished. But I finished one page as color along for my Patreon, which was a little bit challenging because of the colors. There are a lot of rocks here, everywhere. And I knew that I want to make this creature in the colors of the rocks. It seems like he has like the rocky shell, which indicates that he can hide around the rocks. So I wanted to make it in the same colors. At the same time, I wanted to make it a little bit different, because if I would do it in the same colors like the other rocks, it wouldn't just pop out. Also the ground. It's obvious that there are rocks on the ground as well, but again, if I would make them in the same colors as all the other rocks, it would just blend together. However, I didn't want to use too much colors. So I decided to make the ground in the same colors as the sky, then a little bit lighter and more glossy the shell of the creature, and then I added green to add a little bit of accent. And I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but everything was done with colored pencils and acrylic markers. I have one more page here, and this was finally the work in progress page that I finished. Again, I started with watercolors on the background, but then I did mostly colored pencils and oil pastels a little bit just for the smoke and here for the fire. And I also used some acrylic markers, especially for the yellow highlights and for the lava. And again, the colors were really challenging to choose because this is fiery theme. So how to do it and not make everything yellow and red, right? So I added some pink or purple color into the red, here, and also on his head. Then I also added bright yellow for the smoke here. I did darker hills in the background and turquoise astronaut. I also combined red and blue on the ground, which also helped to break the very warm and yellow and orange and red background. Here comes another Maria Trolle coloring book, Moon Valley, and I finally did a page in this book. I enjoyed that so much. This was my very favorite page, even before I had this book, and I'm very happy that I was able to transfer what I imagined into the paper. I was using, I think, Supra colors for the background and then regular pencils on top of it, and then everything else is also colored pencils. And yeah, the background was actually very easy to do. It was just a lot of work. And I have two more pages here which are unfinished. All is done with Derwent Inktense and it's just a base. I plan to add more pencils and do more details on both pages, but who knows when. Anyway, this book is really pretty. Let's continue with pop manga, and this is great book for doing backgrounds. And I'm actually using this book for my background tutorials series on my Patreon. So this was done with oil pastels and this with watercolors. And I finally also finished the illustration, and I plan to finish the illustration on this side as well. All these background tutorials are commented, and this is also another tutorial for watercolor background. I have one page in Midnight Masquerade by Hanna Karlzon, and I actually don't have any more pages here. Well, this was my first attempt with watercolors, years ago, and based on this result I quit watercolors. However, it wasn't me, it was the watercolor set, which was very cheap. It was a set from AliExpress, and this is exactly what happened if you are using not good art supplies. After years I decided to try watercolors again, but this time I bought higher quality watercolors, and since then the results are on totally different level. This is an example because the whole background is done with watercolors and only all the candles, candle holder and the mask was done with pencils. Interesting that I wasn't using any green on this background. It was simply mixing yellow and blue together and it created this effect. I also did the glaze. So when I was finished with the background and everything was completely dry, and I think I did it at the end of the coloring, I took a light mixture of water and warm yellow and I just glazed over the yellow parts, which made it more warm. If you do just a light glaze, just one coat, you won't reactivate the paint that is below. So it's really very effective way how you can change the tone, or you can make something darker. You can make light wash of black or some dark color and you can make darker edges or so. It's really effective. And as usually, the book is great. There are no marks on the other side. Let me take you to the romantic country. I have my first 2 pages, even though only one is finished, but I started to color with a purpose. If you are not that familiar with that, you can check out the first coloring video where I colored this page and I talked about why I decided to give a purpose to every page I will color next. And this was really interesting experimental page. At first I was using watercolors on the whole background and then I covered everything with oil pastels. I'm not sure if it's better or worse. If I look at this page, I don't see actually the final result in the sense of like this is some artwork, but I rather see the idea behind it and what the page did for me, basically, because it was the first page that I used for breaking me free from my comfort zone. So I rather see a meaning on this page rather than some art piece. The rest of the illustration is some colored pencils, I think luminance or something like this. I usually use a mix of brands. And then here is second page. It's still in progress. However, it was the first time, maybe, I don't know. If anything, it was after a really long time where I did something that bright and fresh. I was also using Shinhan Art watercolors, which is not the usual brand I am using, but these watercolors, they are more translucent and they are softer, I would say. 2 pages in Worlds of Wonder by Johanna Basford. This is the first one. I was using oil pastels for the background and light fast pencils for the illustration. I also used oil pastels for the ground and then I did some clouds and stars. I have to say that the clouds, maybe I did too much of them because they made the overall look much lighter and I kinda miss the intensity of the colors. I'm not sure if I showed you this page last time, but I think I did. Anyway, I like it that much that I'm just showing that to you again. And you know, oil pastels, they took this page on totally different level. I'm just so impressed. Anyway, the current page I did is this one. It was quite simple. I was using watercolors for the background and I did really simple galaxy and then I used pencils for the ship, and for the balloon again I was covering everything with gouache and then I used pencils on top of that. Here, for example, I don't like the texture on the balloon. I would prefer if it would be more smooth. And I also did a page in small Victories. And isn't it cute? I'm so in love with this result. I was inspired by a game that I used to play when I started to play online games years ago. And I tried to make the underwater world and goldfish, but again, I covered the fish with gouache. And I'm just wondering how often I'm using gouache to cover the lines, when in fact I don't like the result that much. And I don't like the texture and everything, yeah. Anyway, it is what it is, and there are watercolors on the background and pencils on the illustration, and then some gold paint. Animorphia is one of the books where I somehow like to do double pages. So yeah, it's interesting, and it's probably because the illustrations are so easy, so simple, and there is a lot of space for the background. This is very recent page. It was a lot of work, a lot of pencil work, because everything is pencils. At first I did the background with watercolors, and I really like that. However, I wanted to try to add some Zen doodles on the background, and when I did them, I didn't like how it looked like. So I added some pencils and more pencils, and then it ended up like this. But I really like it. I also used watercolors actually on the whole illustration just to make a base, and then I was using colored pencils on top of it. I did a little bit more work on the horns with watercolors. However, this is not very good paper, even though this is the Polish edition, and usually the paper in Polish editions is great. However, this is some older one, and maybe the paper was just different, so it bleeds through, and it's also very fragile. You can see it here on the horn that I almost ripped the page here, and I did rip the page here in the middle. Even though I wasn't using that much water here, I used much more water on the background, but the middle part of the book is always very fragile. It was much worse while I was working with that, and I wasn't fixing that. I just tried to be very gentle and not to make it worse. And I was using oil pastels for this yellow glow, and I think that this was the detail that made it look like a movie poster. It's not all. I promised you some of my work in progress pictures. Well, I already showed you a lot of them. I am also working here in Coloring Heaven, and I chose this page. I chose this because it seems simple, and I want to try to color this page in a very simple way. Another page is for the tutorial, background tutorial with acrylic markers, and I will probably finish the illustration as well, but I really like the background, and it's all done with acrylic markers. Not that it would be easier, but it's quite pretty. And then Mystic Animals. This is quite new coloring book in my collection, and again I want to make it simple. However, I didn't start simple, I think. So I was using alcohol markers with pencils on top, and now I'm just thinking about other colors. Alright, have a meow someday, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!